Let's jump directly to our keynote speaker, which we are very honored and very happy that she could join us today. So we'll have the title of the keynote speak is about promoting fundamental rights across all generations. And we'll have with us Ms. Sabine Springer from the European Agency for Fundamental Rights. So just introducing Sabine, she's a project manager at the European Union Agency for Fundamental Rights, and she works on older persons' rights, age discrimination, youth participation, and intergenerational fairness. She's responsible for the report Fundamental Rights of Older People, ensuring equal access to public services in digital societies, and this was published in 2023. You might take a look, which is very interesting. Sabine Springer is also a statistician and a demographer, and she gained international experiences working in the United Nations for Population in Nigeria and the UN Habitat in Kenya. Moving to Paris to finalize her PhD at National Institute for Demographic Studies, she participated in 2 European projects on the living conditions of older persons, and since 2010, she has contributed to various surveys from the Agency on Roma, LGBTIQ, and fundamental rights. Her work has also extended to the rights of children, youth, and older persons. So, Sabine, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me and giving me this opportunity and for this extremely flattering introduction. Which now takes away my first sentences, of course. So just to repeat that I'm working at the European Union for Fundamental Rights, Agency for Fundamental Rights, where we are covering many aspects based especially on the European Charter for Fundamental Rights. And I'm taking, in general, a demographic approach to look at these. And therefore, I'm quite happy to talk here about the work we have done so far. But to be frank, we have not worked that much on age discrimination as such. And you will learn during the presentation I will give why. And especially our work on intergenerational solidarity, fairness, justice, how you want to name it, is also quite new. And so I will share my first thoughts about this with you. So I will now try to share my presentation, which of course is here.
It's working fine, Sabine.
Should it be okay now?
It's okay.
Okay, so quickly to let you know what you can expect from my presentation. I will shortly say who is FRA and what we do. Then I will dive into the topic of ageism, age discrimination, and stereotypes. I will give a not complete overview of the EU legal framework in the area of age, the rights of older persons, and the protection on the ground of age. Then I will discuss the EU policy instruments, and passing by a short view on the demographic change in the EU, I will come to the second term today, which will be on intergenerational fairness, justice, solidarity, or culture, as is in the name of this conference. And then I will try to give name some future challenges and some way out. So first of all, the European Union Agency for Fundamental Rights is based in Vienna, in Austria. We have nice weather, by the way. It's an independent agency where we try to identify trends by collecting and analyzing data, and you can find them on our website. We contribute to a better lawmaking and implementation by providing independent advice, by supporting rights-compliant policy responses, by providing real-time assistance and expertise, and promoting rights, values, freedoms, and strengthening the cooperation with national and local fundamental rights actors. I have to switch this off. So just a quick overview of FRA's work in the area of age and age discrimination. So the already mentioned report, which was published in 2023, which looks at the problems older persons might face when accessing public services, which are more and more digitalized. Then we have a focus chapter, which is one of the bases of all our thinking on age, because it proposes a rights-based approach to aging. We have several bulletins on fundamental rights implications during the coronavirus pandemic, which also focuses on older persons. And then we have a FRA opinion in 2021 on the equality in the EU 20 years from the initial implementation of the equality directives. So this is only a short overview. I thought that might be of interest. And here we are. I would like to talk now about ageism. And I think that the best text I found about it was in the World Health Organization Global Report on Ageism. And I will read it out quickly because it's really good. Ageism refers to stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination directed towards others or oneself based on age. Ageism can manifest at the institutional and the interpersonal level, or it can be self-directed. Ageism can be implicit or explicit depending on our level of awareness and of being ageist. Ageism starts in childhood and is reinforced over time. Ageism intersects with other isms, and can result in compound disadvantages. And so ageism is how we think, how we feel, and how we act. I think this summarizes it quite well. So I wanted a little bit to talk about the consequences that ageism can have on the individual. First of all, it can impact the mental health because it can create feelings of worthlessness, depression, anxiety, and risky health behavior, loneliness, and it reduces the quality of life. And the World Health Organization estimates that 6.3 million cases of depression worldwide can be attributed to the effects of ageism. So you can see that this has really a huge impact on the well-being of people. Ageism has also consequences on the physical health because you can have higher stress levels, you can develop chronic health conditions, it can have an impact on your cognitive skills, and it can even decrease your life expectancies. Something which is also very important in this context is the physical violence, very often against older persons. But there's also a risk that ageism increases poverty, especially when ageism at the workplace, which affects older and younger workers. There is unequal access to skills because of ageism, access to training. Also, this lowers your employment opportunities, has an impact on your salary levels and on the social protection benefits. And all this can lead to economic disparities. And then, as already said before, and very much linked with it, with the mental health, ageism has consequences for your social life because it can lead to social isolation and loneliness, because it reduces opportunities to participate in activities. It can have negative consequences on the overall quality of life. And this is particularly true for people living in rural and remote areas. And there is an increased risk of economic and financial exclusion. When we are looking at institutional ageism, this has an impact on societies and economies and on the norms on which are based these societies. Institutional ageism happens in many institutions and sectors, for instance, in the health and social care sector, at the workplace, in media, and in the legal system. and it has economic costs because it can lead to early retirement, to increased unemployment, and therefore to workforce shortages. And this, as a consequence, increases the dependence on social welfare programs. There's also an impact because it can lead to underutilization of skills because of age stereotypes, which can then hinder them, persons of different age groups, to fully involve in innovation and productivity. Healthcare, institutional ageism has a huge impact there because it can lead to the rationing and suboptimal treatment of people, to a lack of preventive care. And this is also important, exclusion from research, because older age groups very often are not included in medical research studies. It can also lead to insufficient appropriate long-term care settings, and it can potentially worsen the health outcome for a whole entire age group. And data collection. In the surveys, we often see that children and older persons are not sufficiently covered or even excluded because, especially for older persons, there is an age cut-off at 65 or 74 very often. And children up to the age to 16 are very often not at all included, and we only have indirect information about them through household information. And then there is the cultural and societal impact of institutional ageism, because ageism perpetuates negative stereotypes, attitudes towards age groups. It hinders social cohesion, and it creates division within societies. So I want quickly to go over the EU legal framework. It's not exhaustive what I present here. And the basis of the EU is the Treaty on the European Union. And there in Article 2, there are the values of the EU. And these are respect of human dignity, freedom, democracy, equality, the rule of law, and respect of human rights, including the rights of persons belonging to minorities. More concretely, in the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union, in Article 19, it provides the power for the EU to take appropriate action to combat discrimination based on several grounds, and here age is particularly mentioned. We also have the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights, and here in Article 20 it says that everybody is equal before the law. It prohibits discrimination on the ground of age, and Article 5 recognizes and respects the rights of older persons to lead a life in dignity, independence, and to participate in social and cultural life. And in some other articles, it recognizes the general right to social security and assistance, the right to access to care, healthcare, and to services of general economic interests. So this is all very relevant for all age groups, but in particular to older persons also. So on the EU level, we have one council directive, the Employment Equality Directive, which covers equal treatment in employment and occupation, and age is particularly mentioned. And since 2008, there is a proposal for an equal treatment directive, which should cover the general equal treatment and also including in particularly age. And this has been just discussed again this spring, and there is still no unanimity for the adoption of this directive, so the negotiations are continuing. Once we have this directive, this would quite change the landscape of EU policies, I think. So now to the EU policy context, looking from the perspective of age and also intergenerational solidarity, and there has really been quite some movement since we are now trying to create a union of equality. And there are many EU strategies for many groups, but not for older persons. And there has been a demographic toolbox which addresses one of these policy developments. I think from a demographic perspective, I would say rather late. It was recognized that we have a demographic change, meaning that the society is aging rapidly, and that we have to address it. And since this is different in each member state, the tools that member states need differ, and therefore there has been created a demographic toolbox where a lot of different policy tools are connected, and where in function of the situation the countries can look for solutions for their problems. And one of the very important strategies is the European Care Strategy, which takes an intergenerational approach. Okay, I want to focus here on the European Economic and Social Committee, because they are very active in this behalf, and they have called for a paradigm shift towards older people, moving away from an approach considering older persons only as a cost for society, and to focus on empowering them and eradicating ageist views. And they have made two proposals. There was a proposal for an opinion for the need for a European strategy for older persons. Unfortunately, it was not taken on board yet. I have not heard of it again. And at the moment, there is a document that promotes European intergenerational solidarity. Both papers are really very interesting to read. And especially the latest one reflects what has appeared at the EU level, that there is more and more talking not about age groups or older persons, but intergenerational solidarity or justice. And this has perhaps a reason. I will come to this, but first I wanted to say why the discourse has also changed, because there is a demographic change. I don't know in how far you are familiar with this, but the demographic change means that the composition of the population, and here I have on the graph the EU, all countries combined, and in yellow women, men, and blue is 2000. The dark blue is 2022, and where the bars are not filled, that is 2100. I don't know how you say this correctly. So you can see that we will, in the next 80 years, there will be a difference in the age structure of the European population, because this is driven by three factors. It's fertility, mortality, and migration. So we know that in many countries, fertility is very low. We also know that mortality is decreasing because of, or pushed back because we have increasing life expectancy. People are living longer and in better health. And what might perhaps help us at the moment is the migration movements, because they also add to fill in some of the blank of the deficits left by decreasing fertility. So when we are looking at this change of the age structure, we can see that there will be problems, because we will have less children, we will have therefore in the future less people in the labor market age, and we will have more and more people who are no longer of age to work, and therefore will depend on the social protection system. And this has to be, of course, addressed on the policy level. And this brings me to this new word which came up not so long time ago, and it starts with intergenerational. And it ends with different things like solidarity, justice, fairness, culture. So the World Health Organization says that ageism can also be tackled through intergenerational solidarity, which is crucial in fostering a cohesive society where the strengths of each generation complement the others. So here I'm in new ground. We have not published anything on this. We are just starting on the concept of intergenerational solidarity. We are trying to integrate it into our work program. And that brought me to think a little bit about what does generation mean? Because when you're looking at the different papers, I never find it very clear, I have to say. So I sat down and thought it through, and I came up with 4 different concepts in the end, which are overlapping and which are used interchangeably while they are describing something else. So the first, and we all know this, is the family generation. So we have child, parent, grandparent, and so on. Then we have age groups. So we say, in general, okay, the young generation, this is those who are currently aged, let's say 15 to 29, or the old generation, which might be 75, open-ended. Then we have generational concept, which is based on the year of birth. So it's a cohort in a way, how we say. So the Gen Z, you have certainly heard of this, is something like this, because they are, I don't remember which ages, but let's say we have we have people who are born between 2000 and 2010. So this is a generation. They have born the same year, and while they age, they make the same or similar experiences because the environment in which they are aging is the same. So they have a sort of common understanding and pool of experiences. So this is one concept of generation as well we should take into account, and which is also very often taken into account in sociology. And then we have another concept, which is the future generations, meaning all those who are not yet born. So I think I cannot yet tell you what this means in the context of fundamental rights, because we are just starting to think about it and to analyze it. But I would like to share some of my thoughts, which came also to me while I prepared it and read again some documents. So I will concentrate not on this solidarity, justice, and fairness part of this concept, because there also we can look into different interpretation. But when we look at intergenerational, so it means between generations, but it is never clearly said what and how. So there is somehow we say it might be an answer to a situation in which we are right now, where everything becomes less jobs, less budget, less care places, more competition on the other side, and more challenges, more changes, less security, less possibilities to planify. So there is a certain problem of not having enough resources, and on the other side, having less security and knowing what will come. So perhaps this use of intergenerational solidarity as a word to bring into policy is, from my perspective, perhaps a possibility to approach something where we cannot negotiate the rights of everybody, but we have to take into account the limitations of means. And so while not negotiating rights, we need to talk between each others, and that might be the generations, between different age groups, between people in different phases of the life cycle, to find solution that strengthens the solidarity between all, in acknowledging that the environment has changed and that we have to share the burden in a fair and just way across all people alive at that moment, and not forgetting those who will be born in the future. So that were my still not very clear thoughts, and I hope that you can at one point read more about this and especially the fundamental rights perspective on our website. I try nevertheless to have a way forward. So I'm convinced that we need to continue to apply a fundamental rights perspective on aging, and especially using a rights-based and life cycle perspective. And especially we need to ensure political participation for all, off and online. We have to continue to combat ageism. So we have to fight this deficit-oriented picture of older persons, but also the stereotypes of young people. And one example also, which always gets me, which I really don't like and which I find very often, is that there are some definitions of old where there are arbitrary age cutoffs, or when you say adults, and then the age group they refer to is 16 to 74 years old. So we have to come to terms with the idea that there are more and more people, or that the part of the population aged 75 and plus will rapidly increase and will really be a very important part of our population. And then something which also is very relevant for policy making is that we have inclusive monitoring and data collection. So especially not excluding older persons or younger or children. And especially we have a monitoring mechanism for the digital indicators, and that is cut off at 74. So we don't know how older persons fare in the digital sphere, in fact. And especially we also have to include persons living in residential institutions in our data collection. Thank you very much for your attention. And I'm looking forward to your questions, and I try to go.
Thank you, Sabine. Thank you so much for this introduction and for this framing and combination. I appreciate it a lot that you have tried to combine all these different concepts, which it has been actually the challenge that we have faced within the past 3 years. And thank you also for this way forward. I think it's really the key part, especially when you mention now the age cutoffs that they end up in 74 years old, which completely gives no data about whatever instance it's happening in the profile of older people after 75 years old. So thank you so much for this. I think it's something that most of our audience may not be so aware of, that we really do not have systems for data collection that goes beyond that. So thank you a lot. I was trying to see if there are some questions on the chat from our participants. If you haven't thought of one yet, you may come up. I was also trying to making some thought-provoking comments, maybe not a question, as you also mentioned, Sabine, at the beginning, that there are still a lot of things to do. You just mentioned that there are no data collection after 75 years old. So speaking about old people, but also you mentioned that are age stereotypes also for young people. So once we speak about age stereotypes, it's about age. So we are not saying old age stereotypes only, they are from both. And old people mention it. So my thought-provoking comment would be how we can advocate, and each of us, because of the way that we have developed ourselves in terms of an academic background or our profession, how we ensure that we are complying with the rights for all generations and we are not putting one or the other aside, though of course trying to look at those that are in more vulnerable positions. I always tell that. So I'm a gerontologist. So for my background and my experience, I tend to have a lens that are for older adults. But indeed, while I'm doing that, I may put younger people and young adults aside. So this is a bit a thought-provoking comment. Sabine, if you want to share your comment on that, you are happy to. And while you think about that, it doesn't have to have an answer, of course.
No, I just thought I want to clarify. There are some data about older persons, but it is not systematically. And there's even a survey which is only targeting older persons, which might be also interesting for you. It's SHARE, which targets 50 plus. So this is also, there is some, but in the Eurostat data collection system, there are still some problems, especially when it comes about digital skills, which was where I was looking into it. And like you, and as you said during my biography, I'm coming from the older person's age, but now I'm the manager of the to-be youth advisory panel to FRA. So, because this is one thing, young people have, because they are less, we have to think about it, because they are less, in a democracy, every vote counts the same. At one point, each vote is the same, but there are more older persons who will vote for their own interests, perhaps, while younger persons have a problem to make themselves heard, and also that it is reflected in demographic elections. It's a tricky subject, I have to say, but we have to think about it, and I read an article about it. We have to think about young people who have much less. I mean, when we were young, we had the world open to us in a way. There were no big risks. But now when they are young, they see there are wars, they have to pay for things. They don't know if they will get pensions. So their situation is different. So I think it's a good way to put from time to say, I'm also beyond 50. So we step in their shoes and look from this perspective, and that we are reaching out to them and that we are discussing and that we find the solutions. And I think this is what this intergenerational approach wants. And FRA will also, with this youth advisory panel, then organize intergenerational dialogues so that we really give them the space they need also to create their own future somehow.
Okay, thank you, Sabine. I just want to give you some comments that we have on our chat. So we have here Ana Boaventura from On the Flow, and she says, thank you, Sabine. This is so important. The Generation X and etc. classification, it's very relevant in my field. And she says, we work with digital information. As you mentioned, Sabine, that the type of classification map the same type of behaviors, also in terms of content consumption. And she's Ana Boaventura, she's asking if you agree on that. So the difference between the content creation, so the digital content creation and consumption, so these different types would be needed to clarify. And also she's asking if are there any activities that anyone is doing that connects young and older generations. I will leave this one from Carla Cabeceira because we have in the upcoming roundtable. So in this field, Sabine, do you have, because you were responsible for the report on the digital public services for digital societies, which were very specific, as you remember, you mentioned to us once, that it was it was not a big broad all digital literacy, it was a very specific part. So I'm assuming that on that report, this part of the digital content creation was not so much highlighted, I'm assuming.
No, it was not. We were really concentrating on the barriers to the access to these services. So looking at the digital divide. so the tools and everything. And we did not go into, and also there is not much data for older persons because these indicators are not populated by for certain ages. So we did not look in this, but it might be interesting. I can think of some things which might be good to look into.
Okay, for sure, we'll be happy to receive them. So Sabine Springer, so it's my duty to welcome you and to thank you so much for your keynote speaking. I think it was very, very nice for this introduction and framing what we wanted, that people see that we do have to promote fundamental rights and that these are right. And when we are speaking about ageism, it's not just something and I beg your pardon to say that it's not something that we have a conversation in the cafe and it might hurt someone in my neighborhood. It's something that it's really institutional, as we presented at the beginning, and we really need to overcome that. So thank you so much.